because I was the oldest, I used to spend a lot of time with my dad. And I mentioned he was an entrepreneur. So while he was building the successful career in plastics, on nights and weekends, he would be trying to start his own business. He would invent things or manufacture things. And he'd get a little manufacturing space somewhere. And I would hang out with him while he was doing this. And when I was 12 years old, and this really informed me in my life, when I was very young, he told me, and I remember this, son, if you ever get a chance to own your own business, you should do that, because working for people is fine and has merit, but there's nothing like owning your own business and working for yourself and making your own decisions. And so that stuck with me. And so in the back of my mind, I thought, one day I am going to own a business, but I didn't know what that was. So when I graduated from school, I continued to wait tables. I liked the restaurant industry. I was good at it, and thought maybe I'd go into restaurant management. There's a lot of teachers in my family background, and so I thought maybe I could go into teaching. And as some of you know, liberal studies major sets you up towards getting that teaching credential. It's a pathway. And so those were really the two ideas, that I would maybe be a restaurant manager or be a teacher, until I had my epiphany. A lot of things came together. I was working in the restaurant business. I thought I might own a business one day. And I was sitting with my roommates down in San Felipe eating fish tacos and drinking Coronas. And this is probably the third or fourth time. And then the light bulb went off, because I saw all these other students like me loving fish tacos, loving drinking cold beer with their fish tacos, but nobody was doing that in a big way in San Diego. And so that's when I thought, you know what, this could be it. Maybe I should do this. And so I asked, I got the recipe for the fish batter to make a fish taco. The rest of it was pretty obvious. Any fresh fish that you caught or had, you could just, dust it in flour, put it in this beer batter. Then I now had the recipe too, or at least the ingredients. A corn tortilla, a little white sauce, some mild salsa and cabbage and lime. Very simple. And so I wrote down this recipe for the batter. And back then, before iPhones, we carried around little pocket address books. And so in the back cover, which I still have to this day, it's framed in the office, I wrote down the ingredients: flour, water, salt, oregano, mustard, garlic, etc. And I learned how to operate a restaurant from the back of the house. I had the front of the house experience, but no back of the house experience in terms of managing a P&L and doing all that. So with that experience, after a year and a half, my dad said, if you want to do this, it's time. I just got some profit sharing that I cashed in, and we can start this business. So then that's when he told me to go look for a restaurant location, and that became Rubio's Mission Bay #1, which is still there at 4504 Mission Bay Drive. And that was the first Rubio's, and we opened in January 25th, 1983. If you have enough self-belief and confidence and perseverance, you could give it a go. And that's what I did. And so I just didn't know any better. And then the other thing that really pushed me to succeed was I didn't have a plan B. I was 28, 29 years old. A lot of my friends had gone on to successful careers and professions, or they were well on their way. Here I was frying fish tacos in a fish taco stand with visions of having, maybe 20 restaurants one day. And I just didn't see any way back. I wanted to do a soft opening because we didn't really have the operations figured out. This was really new for us. We never opened a restaurant before, my brothers and I. And so, but people had seen us under construction, so they were really curious. And so when we went to open the doors for that first day on January 25th, we had a line out the door, line down the block. And we were shocked and said, okay, well, let's try. And all these people came in, and we blew it. We blew it. The food wasn't coming out right. We were messing up everybody's orders. We were giving refunds left and right. It was a disaster. And we scared off so many people the first few days. But like you said earlier, you got to pivot. You got to learn from your mistakes. And so we did. So quickly, we started realizing where the issues were, the bottlenecks, what was going wrong. We fixed them as fast as we could. And then if you ever came by my office, I graphed the first 24 months of sales at that restaurant, and every month is successively better than the last. But when I look back in my career, I look back most fondly on those first 2 years. That startup phase where every time you put the key in the door, you don't know what to expect. And and the adrenaline's going, man, because you're fighting for your life and you're just trying to figure everything out. And you're just living, breathing this business and trying to make it come alive and, live the dream. And it was so much work. It was so intense. And that's what I remember. It was just an intense time. It was a challenging time, but the adrenaline was going, and I fed on that. The two things that we did right I just mentioned earlier, we reacted quickly to our problems. We were good problem solvers right out of the gate. We managed cash. I really kept an eye on, we just really had a couple of checking accounts, one for payroll and one for the operating cash, and I always paid attention to that. And I've always been, and we have been, conservative with our capital and our cash. And I guess the other thing that we did really well, one of the things I love about my business is the creative aspect to it, the marketing, creating recipes. And so we were very creative. One clear mistake we made was we grew too fast, and that's something that any growing business needs to be careful of, because all of a sudden you get advocates and our investors. This was in the heyday of the public markets. It was all about growth, and after we went public, we were growing at a rate of about 40% a year in unit count year over year, and that was way too fast. We did not have the resources to build our business effectively. We didn't have the bench of management talent. And so we made real estate decisions that weren't the good ones. We weren't able to staff our restaurants properly, and we made some big mistakes, especially, and another mistake we made related to that is we entered markets without really understanding them. Half of what I do, or my job description, is visiting the restaurants. I always say you can't run a restaurant business from behind a desk. And we have beautiful corporate offices up in Carlsbad, and that's all well and good. But no, for the longest time, for my entire career, I visit restaurants. And usually it's unannounced. So I walk in, and I don't know what I'm going to get. Usually it's very good. But there have been times where, I've walked into a few disasters, or people don't recognize me, especially when if I walk into a restaurant in Salt Lake City, they're probably not going to know me because I can only get out there maybe once a year at the most. In San Diego, we have a lot of tenure. A lot of our managers I've known for years. When I look back on my career, 35 years, what really matters to me are the people I've worked with. And maybe it wasn't so intentional, but looking back now, I was able to partner with, work with, side by side with some really interesting people. So I would tell you, in your career, whether you're an entrepreneur or whatever you're doing, surround yourself with really interesting, smart people and engage with them. And those relationships, beyond the business fundamentals itself, it's the people relationships that matter to me now. I'm working full time. I love what I do. I still have equity in the business. I'm starting to look ahead and figure out what my future might be one day, without being fully committed in terms of time to Rubio's. There's other things I could do, but right now I really love what I do. I still see a big future for Rubio's, and I'm going to stay indefinitely. I just don't know how this might evolve, but I've been able to write my own ticket, and so I pretty much get to do what I want to do, and I'm just super excited and enthusiastic about what I do every day.